Okay, here we'll examine SharePoint Central Administration. There's our remote box. Let me close Central Administration. I got it up and running. Here's my business intelligence site, and I'm going to leave that one out. So to start Central Administration, I'm going to go down to Start, All Programs. If I can find it, SharePoint Central Administration right here. And I'll click that on up, and I get the usual irritating pop-up, and I'll say, yeah. Now, Central Administration came up quite quickly. When you fire up Central Administration, it may take a while to come up. Mine came up so quickly because I started it a few minutes ago and it was still in memory. So you can see it's a website. It's on the Atheno Group member server and it's at port 2613. And also you see it's running an ASPX page. Now, what we're interested in here, you could do a course on at least a day on Central Administration alone because it's so darn important. But what I want to show you down here is if we come in and we're going to take a look at the concept of service applications. If you remember the service application, I'm just under Application Management, and I'm going to select Manage Service Applications and let that come on up. The service applications are what we're going to use to provide services, and these are the replacement for the shared service provider in previous iterations of the product. So here as we drop on down, we can see all the shared services. Move it on down like this. And the ones we're particularly interested in the land of business intelligence are the Excel service application, business data connectivity services, performance point applications, and and Visio graphics. I'm sorry, not a huge fan. Visio graphic service down here like that. And we've got those. Also, the secured store is really very important too, but that's important for a number of different applications. We have an appendix in the course that covers the secured store. So now there's the managed services, and you notice down here I can go new, and I could create a new managed service. Let's just, for example, pick and say I want to create a new performance point service application. And then I get this little wizard that'll pop on up, and I'd fill it on out, give it a name, and then the database server, etc. And I can create a new service, and I can do that so that if I wanted, I could associate this service with a different web application. So if I wanted to have a different configuration, I would do it this way. Let's cancel out of that because I don't want to hose my installation. So now let's go back home. I'm going to go back over to Central Administration, and there's our service applications. Now, as we go through this course and get into each individual service, performance point, business data connectivity services, Excel services, etc., we'll go back over into Central Administration and look at those services specifically. But for now, if you remember, we have a hierarchy as we roll down. We start at the top, which is the farm, which contains the servers, etc., and we drill on down, and beneath the farm are the web applications. So under Application Management, let's take a look at Web Applications, and you'll see I have two of them. One of them is up here at SharePoint, the default port 80, and that is my BI site up here running on the default port, and you know it's the default port because no port's listed up in here. So that's my BI site. And then the other one I have is Central Administration. Now, if I go over here into, well, let's stay in this. I'll go over and click into SharePoint 80, and I can come down here and I can take a look at, where is it? There we are, Service Connections. Service Connections is not what you think it is. You know, we're thinking of Service Connections. We're immediately thinking that we're going to create, you know, some kind of a connection into a database. But what this says is that site on port 80 is associated with these services down here, and this is the default list. And you notice that it's associated with everything I had. If I went through and I had created another, say, performance point service application, and I want to associate a site just with that, I would click this down here, go into Custom, and then I would come down and select whatever it is I want to associate, whatever service I want to associate with that site. Now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to cancel out of it. So that's how we would associate a site within a service. Now, we'll go back to Central Administration. And if we want to create a site collection, remember, we take from the farm, we drop on down to web applications, and then we drop down to web site collections. So I'm going to go create site collection. And what we have up here by default is the only site we have, the only web application, Mastino Group member server on port 80. Now, if I wanted to create another site collection down here, I would just give it a name, something like, I don't care. But you'll notice down here the URL, it's going to either be in personal or in the sites collection. That's because we already have a root defined, a root site collection defined, and now as I come down here and create other collections, then I would have to associate it as a root down off the descendant. If I did not want that, if I wanted to create a base collection, then I would have to come in and say new web application, and my new web application would fire on up, and then I would go through and configure that new web application. And then down here I would come through and I would give it a port or a host header, etc., and I would fill out all of these options, which we'll do a little bit later on. For now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go back over to Central Administration, and I've shown you the Manage Web Application, Manage Site Collections, and now let's go through and take a quick look at Business Interior on the BI site. And remember, so this is part of a site collection, the root site collection off of 80. And if I come down here, Site Actions, and then I go down and I see Site Settings. Now if I come down, you can see I'm in Site Collection Administration, and if I look at the features that I have associated with this site collection, I can go Site Collection Features. And now here's the different functionality that I have available to me in this site collection, which is coming off of, a number of these features are coming off of my shared service provider. And I can come back out of it, and that's my site collection. Under Site Administration, there's the collection administration. Under Site Administration, I also have the ability to look at features, if I can find it. Here we are. Manage Site Features. And site features are different than collection features, because you remember a collection can have multiple sites, and we can turn on and turn off features for the descendants as we come on through. And that is Central Administration.